While doing research for one of my old videos, I came across the following statement. Active forms do not always convey active meaning, nor do passive forms always convey passive meaning. This raises an important question. What exactly do we mean by terms like active and passive voice, and how do they relate to meaning in language? Before diving in, let's quickly define a few key terms. With the active voice, the subject does the action, like the cat chases the mouse. Feles murum agetat. But for a verb in the passive voice, the subject receives the action, as in the mouse is chased by the cat. Mus a fele agetatur. Transitive verbs are verbs that take a direct object. In Latin, this would be usually the accusative case, like she reads a book, librum legit. But intransitive verbs don't need an object, like he sleeps, dormit, does not have an accusative. So let's revisit this quote. Active forms do not always convey active meaning, nor do passive forms always convey passive meaning. There are 5 parts to unpacking the statement, with the first thing coming to mind being deponent verbs. These are verbs that look passive, but have active meanings, like the verb in autumnus aestatem sequitur, autumn follows summer, where our deponent verb sequitur looks passive, but is conveyed into English with the active meaning follows. Deponents are likely a relic of the long-lost middle voice, which probably had forms similar to the passive, and some suggest that the passive evolved from the middle. In Attic Greek, the middle and passive voices are identical in many of their forms. For a longer discussion of this, check out my video on deponent verbs. There are also several perfect participles, which are usually passive in Latin, from regular verbs that have an active meaning, like conjuratus, which means having conspired, and the noun conjurati refers to conspirators, literally those having conspired. Placatus means having pleased rather than having been pleased. Potus means having drunk, drunken, or intoxicated. And it's from these that we get the so-called semi-deponent verbs, where ausus sum means I dared rather than I was dared, and gavisus sum, I rejoiced, active, even though it looks passive, among others. Next, we have the so-called impersonal passives for intransitive verbs, that is, they don't take a direct object. Concurretur, there is a clashing together of soldiers. Pugnatum est, fighting happened, and in this example from Caesar's Gallic War, it was between the Romans and the Helvetians, so we might even translate this as they fought, as in they fought fiercely and for a long time. Diu atque acerter. And also there's ventum est, as in est in Britanniam ventum, also from Caesar, Book 4, where ships is clearly the logical subject. It's easiest to translate this as they, the ships, came to Britain. The fourth involves an old Indo-European idiom, where some perfect tense intransitive verbs correspond to a present tense middle voice form. There's that middle voice again. So the perfect active form reverti has a present meaning that's a bit less active. I turn back, kind of like a I am turned back or I turn myself back. Assensi means I agree, and note the present meaning, but it's really something more like I join myself to another opinion. And finally, there's the idea that intransitive verbs, that is those that don't take direct objects, in the active voice can be closer in meaning to the passive than transitive verbs, those that do take direct objects. The verb cadunt means they fall in battle. It can mean they are killed, which functions as a kind of passive of caidunt, they strike down. The verb sisto has both transitive and intransitive meanings, where transitively it is used to place something somewhere. Tribunus legionem in acie sistit. The tribune places the legion in the battle line. But when it's used intransitively, the subject is the one being placed. Tribunus in acie sistit. The tribune places himself, or is placed, or stands in the battle line. So there we go. 5 different ways to clarify the statement that active forms do not always convey active meaning, nor do passive forms always convey passive meaning.